Hey guys, welcome back to Absolute Astronomy after 2 weeks without any episodes. I'm so sorry. As you can probably tell, my voice is back to normal, which means you'll be getting weekly episodes once again. It was one of those really weird, freaky flu things where it just kind of came out of nowhere and it just hit me really bad and just would not go away for 2 weeks. Anyways, this is the podcast where we discuss space things because space is cool, so let's talk about it. Today we'll be taking a look at the last terrestrial planet in our solar system, but first, let's start things off with a twist.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome to This Week in Space Talk, where we discuss what's making headlines in the space community. Last Tuesday, March 8th, was the one and only total solar eclipse for 2016. The eclipse was visible during the evening over parts of Indonesia and the Pacific Ocean. The last time a total solar eclipse occurred over Indonesia was in 1988, so it was a pretty cool spectacle for those living there to see. In relation to today's specialty space topic, we've got some news coming from Mars. First, some weird photos of Mars moon Phobos were captured. NASA's MAVEN, which is short for Mars Atmosphere and Volatile Evolution, is a satellite that was launched back in November 2013 to study Mars' atmosphere. Obviously, you can't see the photo because this is an audio-only broadcast, but basically it looks like a small brown lump with blue pixels scattered throughout, mostly due to the fact that it was shot in ultraviolet light. Researchers are hoping that MAVEN's measurements will help determine what the moon is made of, where it came from, and whether or not it has organic molecules on the surface. Also in Mars news, the Mars InSight mission has been given the green light for its launch in 2018. The spacecraft missed its original launch date earlier this month due to small leaks in the primary science instrument, a seismometer designed to study the deep interior of Mars. A vacuum chamber in the housing unit of the seismometer failed a leak test, so NASA postponed the launch. But the good news is that repairs are on the way, and hopefully within 2 years she'll be flying in the sky. It's only costing them, a small loan of $150 million to fix it. Maybe we can get Donald Trump's support for that. Welcome back, and that was Imagined Herbal Flows by Depature. As you probably guessed, we're taking a look at a planet that everyone's been talking about for decades, Mars. Mars is the fourth planet from the Sun and the second smallest in all of our solar system. It's often referred to as the red planet because, well, it's red. The surface appears this color due to the high concentration of iron oxide in the soil. I mentioned its moon Phobos in the previous segment, but it also has one other moon called Deimos. Both aren't your average looking moons, which leads scientists to believe that they're actually just asteroids that were captured by Mars' gravitational pull. During its time hanging out in our solar system, Mars has gone through three primary periods. The first is the Noachian period. This was when the planet was first formed 4.5 to 3.5 billion years ago. The surfaces from the Noachian age show large impact craters, which include the Tharsis Bulge, which is thought to have formed during this period. Secondly, you have the Hesperian period, which is named after the Hesperia Planum, a broad lava plain in the southern highlands of the planet. Going back 3.5 to 2.9 billion years ago, this period saw its fair share of the formation of extensive lava plains. And finally, you have the Amazonian period, which dates from 2.9 billion years ago to the present day. Amazonian regions on the planet have few meteorite impact craters, but are otherwise quite varied. One of Mars' most famous formations, the Olympus Mons, which is a giant shield volcano, formed during this period along with lava flows elsewhere throughout the planet. So now we get down to one of the most debatable questions about the planet. Does water exist? Well, there is some evidence of this, but it's not the type of water that comes from a lake. Traditionally, liquid water can exist on the surface of Mars due to its low atmospheric pressure, which is about 100 times thinner than Earth's. But that doesn't mean that at some point in its time, Mars didn't have rivers and oceans flowing on the surface. Spacecraft like the Mariner 9 and Viking orbiters have sent us photos over the years of dry riverbeds and canyons, which seem to indicate that water once existed on the planet. Scientists have only recently discovered that liquid water might flow on Mars, but it's not exactly easy to spot with your eye. I mean, it did take us over 15 years to actually discover it in the first place. Back in 2000, evidence for water on Mars arose when the appearance of gullies suggested a liquid origin. As I mentioned, the planet has a very thin atmosphere, so over time the liquid would be evaporated. More and more of it would be escaping into space each time, which would allow less of it to fall back to the surface. New findings have detected signatures of hydrated minerals on slopes where mysterious streaks were seen on the planet. These dark streaks appear to ebb and flow over time, so scientists knew that something was going on. First identified in 2011, these slopes are known as recurring slope lineae, or RSL for short. The new finding of hydrated salts on these slopes are what point to creating the dark streaks. Much like when we use salt on the roads, the hydrated salts lower the freezing point of liquids, which could lead to ice melting on the planet more rapidly. Scientists say it's likely a shallow subsurface flow with enough water rising to the surface to explain the darkening of the streaks. They've actually discovered frozen slabs of ice under the surface the size of California and Texas combined. These large deposits are trapped at the north and south poles of the planet and average at about 3 kilometers thick. If they were to completely melt, then the entire planet would be covered with about 18 feet of water. Moving on to another big question that the red planet gets: could humans actually live on Mars? The short answer is no, and let me explain why. Mars is actually incredibly hostile for humans. First off, oxygen makes up less than 1% of its total atmosphere. Other than that, it primarily consists of carbon dioxide, so we'd have to be wearing spacesuits with an endless supply of oxygen at all times. And as we've seen in movies like Gravity, that stuff eventually runs out. There's virtually no air pressure, and the temperatures are actually pretty cold. Also, the soil is quite toxic, so we'd have to require a huge decontamination process if we wanted to grow our own food. And although Mars has some of the same natural resources that Earth has, we'd be very limited to accessing spare parts and medical supplies. We'd have to be having a constant stream of supplies coming from Earth, which would get very expensive. And what happens if the Earth just doesn't happen to exist anymore? I mean, that's the whole reason we're going to Mars in the first place, right? Oh, and water. There's not exactly a whole lot of that stuff on Mars, as we mentioned, and as we know, humans are quite greedy when it comes to that stuff, so we would also run out of that very quickly. We also don't know what the long-term effects of low gravity would do to our bodies. Our bones and organs need gravity to be shaped and function, so it's quite possible that living on Mars would lower our life expectancy. The bottom line is that living on Mars might not be such a good idea after all. We could do it, but we'd be relying heavily on technology to keep us both alive and comfortable. While there are a lot of limitations, the next song doesn't have any. I'll catch you back here shortly on Absolute Astronomy.
My innocence, how it always seems to get lost in violence. We always seem to get caught. It's no coincidence that we're running from the past. Forgiveness wasn't something that we had. Limitless. We're living limitless. I refuse to just exist. I'd rather shoot and miss. So I'ma raise my fist and live it limitless, limitless. Just exist. I'd rather shoot and miss. So I'ma raise my fist and live it limitless, limitless. Across the darkest skies, while the masquerade is for the ones who wanna hide. I won't stay in the shadows all my life. Limitless, we're living limitless. I refuse to just exist. I'd rather shoot and miss. So I'ma raise my fist and live it limitless, limitless, limitless. I refuse to just exist. I'd rather shoot and miss. So I'ma raise my fist and live it limitless, limitless.
Welcome back. That was Limitless by Adventure Club featuring Delaney Jane. You see what I did there before the break? Limitless, limits on Mars. Okay. And unfortunately, we've come to the end of yet another episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and sticking around even when I wasn't posting content for a while. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at astro_podcast and check out the